Here we go. All right, my dude.
How you
State
doing?
state your name.
Hey, my name is Daniel.
What is your profession, Daniel?
My real job, I work as a database administrator and IT project manager.
Okay. All right. What is your real passion, though?
Music. I'm a musician, and on the side, I actually am a gardener too.
Right on. Right on. Well, the reason why I wanted to talk to you tonight was because I wanted to know the history of how you got into playing music, how Age of Ruin came to be, and kind of the story of it all. So, like, take me back to being a kid and how all of a sudden you figured out you liked music.
Sure, right on. So I guess my earliest recollection was I was some maybe 6 or 7 years old. My mother um, made me start playing the piano.
Me too.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's how I started.
I think, all right, so we may be sharing a similar path here.
Yeah.
Played that for about 3 years, which um, I don't think I appreciated at the time like I do now, but it gave me a lot of the foundations to reading music, reading the treble clef, the bass clef, understanding rhythm, understanding syncopation. And by that I mean the right hand is doing something that the left hand is doing. It's
Hmm.
not separately. Um, Sort of the foundations of polyrhythms and then also just harmony and key.
Hmm.
So did that for about 3 or 4 years, and then um, I took on the alto saxophone in school as a kid, which where I grew up, the recorder, it's like a flute, was pretty common to be taught to children. So we learned that sometime in the third or fourth grade, maybe. Um, it turns out the fingering and, of course, and then reading music, but the fingering was almost identical to the saxophone, so it was easy to kind of transition over to that, which I did through eighth grade before I was about to go to high school. And then I kind of lost the. I started getting into mainstream music, and at some point around then, I decided I wanted to pick up the guitar.
Hmm.
So I was moving into, about almost 14 years old, going into high school, and it was the decision was kind of put into my own hands at this finally for the first time in my life in terms of what I felt like, in terms of what I wanted to do with music. And what I didn't want to do was march in the marching band on Friday nights at our high school football teams.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, um, I had no interest in that. And on top of that, as this last summer before high school was winding down, the marching band had to go in to school, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month early to start learning all of the steps and everything they do. I had no problem with the music. I enjoyed that still, but I just really had no interest in the marching band. It
Hmm.
was just, to me, it was cheesy. It was
Yeah.
performative in a way I didn't really, it just wasn't something that drove me. And so I remember I actually went and had a conversation with the conductor or whatever, the dude, the teacher. And I told him, I was like, I'm not interested in this marching band stuff. And he told me that if I wasn't going to do the marching band, then I couldn't keep playing. I would have to be in the beginners class because everyone else is committed to this marching band. And I said, all right, well then I quit. And I really focused on the guitar after that.
What was your first guitar?
Oh man,
Was it electric or acoustic?
it was electric, and I still have it.
Wow.
It's a total before Craigslist. We had one in DC called the Washington City Paper. Um, did you grow up in the Philadelphia area?
Yes, I
Yeah.
grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
So you probably had something similar. It was just like a local newspaper,
We
classifieds,
we
right?
had the Trade and Times.
Okay.
So something similar.
Classified section in the back,
Uh-huh.
houses for rent, jobs for sale,
Mm-hmm.
music, right? So it was a Christmas present from my mother. I think when I turned 14, when I was 14 years old, and it was a Yamaha, and I still have it. It's a Strat style. It actually has like a fake Floyd Rose in it, and talk about being. I should have had a hardtail, when I was first
Mm-hmm.
learning. What was
Yeah.
your first guitar?
Um, Strangely enough, I found my first guitar in the trash.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was I was very young. I was probably about 10 years old, and I was walking home from playing a hockey game with my friends in a schoolyard not too far from me. And as I was walking by this apartment complex, there's a dumpster next to it, and there was just this white guitar with no strings on it, no tuning pegs, um, just nothing there. It had a bridge. It had the volume knob. It had pickups, but it was just against the dumpster. It wasn't in the dumpster. It was just like positioned right up against the dumpster. And I just kind of looked around. I'm like, I think that's up for grabs, you know? So I just picked it up and walked home with it. And it sat in my room for a little bit. And then my grandfather, who was a traveling accordion player, when he came to the States from Italy, he took it and gave it to a neighbor across the street who worked at a music store. And they put tuning pegs on it, strings, part of the bridge, and gave it back to me all, ready to go. Um, it was a four-string bass guitar. The neck was heavier than the body,
Hmm.
so it was kind of awkward for me. I didn't, and some basses are like that, but it wasn't a brand name bass or anything. It was just like it. I think somebody just slapped a bass neck on, um, like a bass body, but it was about as terrible as you could get.
You still have it?
No, I don't. To be honest, I can't remember what happened to it.
Um,
Um, so it just sat in my room for a number of years until I went to my second high school. And when my freshman year, I went to a high school near me, and my sophomore year, I transferred to a different high school. And I didn't know anybody. It was an all boys school, and kind of like the second week of school, the somebody in the homeroom across the hall had an acoustic guitar, um, that they brought in to school, and it was the same guitar that Pat Smear played in the
oh,
Nirvana Unplugged. You know what I'm talking about.
yeah, I had a
It's that three-tier color.
ink job or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that. And I was like, "Oh, that's the fucking guitar from Nirvana Unplugged." I immediately recognized it.
Hmm.
And I walked over and I was just like, "Oh, that's really cool. Like, you know, I have a bass guitar, but I don't know how to play it." And he was like, "Oh, well, here I'm gonna write down some tablature on some notepaper, and basically I'll show you, like, this is how you play a guitar." So he wrote down the tab to uh, a Nirvana song, a Stone Temple Pilot song, and I can't remember the third song. And he showed me, like, this is the fret and this is the string, and basically you just listen to it and see if you can do it. And that's what I did. I went home, I listened to it, and um, it was out of tune. I
Hmm.
didn't I didn't have an amp or anything like that. So, but I played it. I played it right. It just wasn't in tune. And then I went and I bought a tuner. Um, and
Cool.
I got a little amp, and I just started playing bass guitar. And that's kind of how I learned. I didn't play guitar for a few years
Okay.
after that, so I kind of learned how to play guitar through playing bass guitar first.
Sure.
And if you know, when you watch me play guitar, you can kind of see that it makes sense because I learned how to be a bass player before I learned how to be a guitar player.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do get that. That's I've heard recently a Dave Grohl interview where he was talking about his guitar playing is very rhythmic in that he thinks of the kick and the snare as he's playing as
mhm,
he as his right hand.
yeah,
Uh, so I can totally understand what you mean by like the rhythm side of applying or the driving to the root.
mhm. I've always had like I've always thought about everything in a more percussive fashion
Mm.
than anything, and I think that's caused me to write like in irregular times. Like I don't usually write in normal 4/4 patterns and stuff like that. Like they come out here and there, but most of the time I kind of end up in 5 or 6 or 3 or 7. Like
Cool.
yeah. And it's not even intentional. It's just kind of how I hear things, you know?
Yeah, it was one of the things that I remember I was watching, when we played with your band, God Given Blades. I was pretty impressed by I sensed a lot of 90s, re, you know,
Oh,
references a little
yeah,
bit. Things like a little Tool, maybe, and the Deftones.
totally.
But the cool adding what you were doing with the guitar, a lot of guitar effects too, but to that, a lot of stuff going on with the rhythm section, which then gave the vocals its own sort of lane because he was using effects on his vocals, and
Hmm.
that was really cool. But because there was so much happening with all of the music, it gave him even more freedom to kind of do its own vocal thing, which I thought was really cool. It
Yeah,
was interesting to listen to, made you kind of think as we were listening. It's cool.
right on, man. You know, I felt the same thing about watching you guys play. I was hyped the entire time. I was like, "Oh, this is so fucking awesome, man! You guys totally brought it to that stage." And
Thanks.
I was super psyched when I was watching you guys play. Because I like you guys immediately reminded me of like the time period where I became a super fan of Unearth.
Okay.
And it just brought me right back to that period of my life. And I was just like, it just made me feel like my early 30s again. And I was just like, you know, when you're in your early 30s, it's like it's for, well, at least for me, I hit this place where all the stuff that I did in my 20s, like all the hard work, all the grind that I did musically started to pay off in my early 30s. And, you know, things just kind of started to happen a little bit easier in terms of getting shows and stuff like that, and playing to more people, and just being in a different band and writing what I considered more progressive music and stuff like that. And it just felt like I was like refining more. You know, I had a little bit more of like this like invincible feeling about like, oh, if you grind, if you work, if you're passionate, it pays off, you know?
Mm. Yeah.
But like, so what I'd like to do, right? You said your your first guitar was electric guitar. What were your early influences as far as guitar players are concerned?
Oh, easily Slash. 'Cause I started playing guitar.
Really?
Slash. Yeah, 100%. I remember fourth grade.
No
Uh,
shit. Okay.
yeah. I'm not the only one, but I
Yeah,
mean
yeah,
that
yeah.
it was just the epitome of cool. I mean,
Hmm.
I was a kid in the '80s, and um, the '80s. When I was a kid, I remember like kind of there was a lot of it, maybe somewhat similar to today, a lot of fear in the news and what was happening in the world.
Totally. Well, we're probably around the same age.
There was still, yeah,
I'll be
pro-
47 in November, so we're probably, you know,
you're the hair ahead of me. Okay,
Yeah.
just a hair. So at the top of the street I grew up at, there was a big siren, which was put there for nuclear threats.
Right.
And was used for weather events, like to warn about tornadoes. But I grew up in Northern Virginia, and tornadoes weren't common. We don't have a lot of the Washington D.C. metro area is rather benign in terms of threats to your life. I mean, there's very bad traffic for drivers, so you could be harmed or killed in a motor vehicle easily.
Hmm.
There's you know, just crime, like, people getting in ugly situations and getting hurt that way. But I mean, in terms of earthquakes, volcanoes, deadly snakes or spiders and all that, there's really nothing. There's no big bears, grizzly bears, or anything around here.
Hmm.
But the threat of war was still persistent, even then in the 80s. The
I remember.
Soviet Union didn't really. The Berlin Wall fell in 1990, I guess it was.
Hmm.
Um, in addition to that, HIV and AIDS was still unknown and very
Yep.
scary. And as a kid, I didn't know much about it, and I was rightfully sort of afraid. And things like acid rain were in the news, and you didn't know that that just meant that the pH was like so slightly more acidic. Like I heard acid rain, and I'm like, shit, it's raining. I gotta get in, or else my face is gonna melt. Like
Right. Right. Right.
so
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was. It just. I remember that sort of period of a lot of that, and the music I didn't really understand either because I hadn't yet grown, evolved sexually. So I'm a child, surrounded by all of this like um, very sexualized stuff like Madonna and the music in some of these '80s hair bands and everything.
Hmm.
So the first music that really spoke to me was first hip hop, and then when I started discovering like some of this loud music that was still commercial because I was young and I didn't have means of getting outside of the MTV bubble, but that was, Guns N' Roses was immediately that, and a friend of mine, we got on a school bus, to take this bus home, and he's like, "You got to listen to this," and puts his Walkman, if you can remember that,
Totally.
over his ears, and he hit play, and it was Appetite for Destruction, and I was like, "Dude, what is this? I need this," and however long it took me to do chores and save up enough money to go to, it's called Kemp Mill Music, was the record and tape store near me, and I bought that tape and I wore it out. I mean, I just absolutely wore it out, and I just loved it. And I really started to gravitate towards that sort of. It was loud, but it wasn't as extreme as what maybe my band explores today and what I got into later. But it was that gateway for sure. And
About what age was this?
well, that would have been fourth. I know it was in fourth grade when I heard that cassette.
Okay,
Uh,
so like you're
Eight.
like 8, 9 years old. Okay, yeah,
Yeah. And then I got heavily into. I was really into the grunge stuff, which I can tell from your music. You have influences there.
totally.
The I think a lot of it. I think that was foundational to me in terms of what I think of in good songwriting. Um, I really like a lot of contrast and dynamic in volume, in what the music is doing, in like aggression and pulling back. I think things like telling a story through a song are important, like getting to a climax and then closing it. Um, so I was really into Nirvana, Pearl Jam, early Pearl Jam. I personally just sort of stopped caring about them after the third or fourth record.
Mm.
It's cool that they still do it,
Yeah.
but that era, that sort of style of it was, it felt like it was protesting what was happening in the world. It felt like it was real. It felt like it wasn't covered in, you know, um, sort of like tuned and cleaned up and polished like a lot of what you were listening to at the time. So, and it was very guitar heavy, very guitar driven, which
It really was.
as
It really was.
once I started getting into guitar, that was something that I focused on, and that's kind of driven a lot of what I like in music right now. Is if it is related to the instrument that I have chosen to study and pursue, I'm really into it. So,
It's kind of the same for me too. Like I'm a guitar player through and through. but I enjoy guitar as an instrument in itself. So any style of music that has like guitar is pretty prominent in it, I'm about it. Like I like just as much jazz guitar as I like metal, as I like rock and roll, as I like blues. Like I like just all of the tones that can come out of the instrument are amazing to me. You know, and all the amps and pedals and everything like that. So I've kind of taken influence from everything that I've listened to in some way, shape, or form. But it's funny because like you know, we experienced the same period of time coming up in music, and it's funny like when you talk about how the 80s was like, you know, everything we weren't quite to the age of like understanding like our sexuality yet, but everything was like very sexualized, especially in like glam rock and everything like that. And I think the thing that uh, appealed in like the grunge era to us was it wasn't sexualized. It was just raw as fuck, you know? And that that struck a chord for me because you know, at that age you're kind of you don't know who you are. You have all these feelings, you have all these emotions, but you don't know what to do with them. And you just saw these guys like being creative in a way where they were expressing that creativity in a very visceral way at the same time, you know? So I get that spoke to me, but like as as a guitar player, I can remember the few moments that really pulled me in. Like when I was a kid, I didn't have MTV. My friends, I didn't have cable. My friends had cable, but like I was out of the loop when it came to MTV and all that stuff. Um, but I did listen to the radio. So what I would do was instead of doing my homework, I'd be trying to do my homework, but I would have the radio on. And I would have the rock station on or the classic rock station on or anything like that. Or even like the pop station. Because I, you know, I was interested in pop music as well. But uh, the the song "Cliffs of Dover" came on from Eric Johnson, and it was the first time I ever heard a song like that without vocals, and it was just all guitar. And it was the fact that there was no vocals and it was just guitar that kind of let my mind wander and just imagine kind of a landscape and what was happening in that landscape. And it just took me someplace different than anything else I ever listened to or heard or understood. And was just like so drawn to the guitar after that, but not in a sense of like I want to play guitar. I just thought it was really interesting because right after that, um, I'll never forget, I saw uh, like a short clip of Jimi Hendrix playing. And I think it was like a clip of Monterey or something like that. And he just looked like Grace while he was like, you could tell he was so engulfed in what he was doing. And that like the sounds, it was during a moment where it was just like, you know, and he's sliding up and down and with the whammy bar and the feedback. And it was just like, I'd heard Jimi Hendrix, but I didn't know it was Jimi Hendrix, you know. But as soon as I heard it, I was like, "Oh, it's that guy." Like
Yeah.
I'd heard Purple Haze, I'd heard Foxy Lady, I'd heard All Along the Watchtower, but I'd never seen Jimi Hendrix. And when I saw it, then it all clicked. It all made sense. Like, oh, that's how he's doing it with his guitar. He's like bending, he's like pushing on his guitar and like sliding his hand up and down it, and that's how he makes that sound. And that was kind of the thing that set me off in the direction of like starting to collect um like cassettes and CDs because I had a few CDs at that point. I had the Black Album, I had Aerosmith's Greatest Hits. Um, I don't remember what else I had, but you remember Goodies when you could get like a penny for however many CDs?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
my parents signed up and they gave me the choice of like the CDs to get, and like like first on the list was like Jimi Hendrix Ultimate Experience, that was like all of his hits. um and then I think like I got Nirvana, I got Green Day, I got like all of the stuff that was like major hits at that time. I basically got the haul. And I had 10, I had Siamese Dream, like all that stuff. And that was like my little library to start with. And I would go to school every day with a little pouch and a Discman. And I would just kind of like sit by myself and listen to music and like in my Discman. And that's really all I cared about doing. But you know, that's the thing that primed me to actually like be really excited and know what I was talking about when I talked to the dude that had the guitar from Nirvana Unplugged.
Yeah,
He's
sure.
just like, "Oh, actually, you know what you're talking about. Okay, yeah, we could be friends." And that was the thing that sparked like me playing music. So, what's what when you started playing guitar and everything like that and started getting like little proficient and stuff, at what point were you like, "I think I want to be in a band?"
I think that part of the reason I picked the guitar up was because of my best friend at the time. We decided we wanted to start a band, and it was like, okay, you start the drums and I'll start the guitar. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I knew I wanted to play it, but it wasn't. It probably wouldn't have happened if we didn't just decide that's what we were gonna do. Um, and I was. It was at that age. I was in eighth grade, and we shared a lot of musical interests, although not identical. I mean, he was very much into some more industrial music than I was. I was into Nine Inch Nails and would listen to Skinny Puppy or
Skinny puppy.
it, you know
Yeah.
KMFDM. I just actually saw this just a few months ago, which was great. I'd
Were
never
you in
seen.
the ministry?
Was into Ministry.
Right on.
Yeah, Scarecrow is one of my favorite songs. It was off of the Demon Knight soundtrack, I
Yeah.
think. Um, but just yeah, Ministry, early Ministry especially was just outstanding.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
TBT was like the fastest song ever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Psalm 69 was great, but he was a little bit more into that direction, and I liked a little bit more of the grunge stuff, which was he tended to be more technical, was into Metallica and Megadeth, Anthrax, and I tended to be more into Nirvana or Alice in Chains or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the gist of it, and so we started this band, and then we had a friend who also played guitar, who we met once we were in high school. Circles merge. He started jamming with us. He was maybe a little bit more like you, was into the Jimi Hendrix. Funny you say that because I remember when I watched you play, I was like, oh, that guy has the curly. You have one of those curly guitar cables. And every time I
Yeah.
see this, I'm like, oh, he's got the Jimi Hendrix cable.
Oh
Because
yeah.
that's who I think of when I see those curly guitar cables. I'm like, Jimi Hendrix,
Exactly. Yeah. It's
that
like
icon.
kind of like my tip to Jimmy, you know?
Yeah. Um, but that guitar player was very much into that. He was more into like the Stone Gossard, very bluesy. He was really into, but more poppy. Like he was really into Live, was a band in the '90s that I didn't really get into things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it did. I'm sure you could. This would probably be an identical path for you too. It was through him that I learned how to play. I took some guitar lessons for a few months, but not very long. Maybe because my family couldn't afford it. I don't know what it was at the time, but it didn't last for longer than a few months. It could have been my parents' schedule not being able to take me. I was young and I don't recall what the rationale was, but my parents did split up when I was, you know, like 12 years old. So there was, we did have MTV, but we didn't. I was kind of like you. I listened to the radio a lot. There was like we had to kind of make do with what we had.
Hmm.
I didn't have a big budget for CDs, so we would listen to the radio and we would record it on a cassette tape.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I do.
Back because you know certain hours of the day they would play music that you would like, and so you would,
Yes,
whatever that
and you
station was, what time it was.
could record it from the
Typically,
radio.
for us that listen to metal, it was typically late at night, so it would be a show from like midnight to one would
Right.
be some radio show that played a lot of heavier stuff,
Hmm.
and that's when you could discover new music. And
Yes.
then it became Headbangers Ball was a thing on MTV, and we would tape that on the VCR.
Oh yeah.
And Beavis and Butthead, you know, there were these like alternative things that were still mainstream that got you exposure to heavier music.
Hmm.
But I had that friend, and we would show each other. Man, people have it so easy today, ourselves included.
Totally.
With what you can find now on YouTube, there's people like you and I that will just demonstrate how to play the guitar. You can learn from outstanding musicians who will teach
Yeah.
you music theory and all of it for very cheap as long as you have an internet connection.
Hmm.
But back then it wasn't so easy. You'd have monthly magazines like Guitar World or Guitar Player would have some tabs in it,
Hmm.
but you need to know how to read that. And some of the songs they would transcribe would be so difficult to play that there wasn't even someone to kind of walk you through the tabs.
Hmm.
Um, but I had this friend, we would learn things, and I would learn something to show him, and he would learn something to show me, and we learned things, I mean, so much through teaching each other that way. And I think it's so important for young musicians to have someone like that, because I learned things like different tunings that I probably wouldn't have explored. And today I don't even like there's the words or there's standard tuning, which is a thing for the instrument, for the guitar, but what is standard anymore? I mean,
Yeah.
how many musicians truly play in a standard tuning, E, A, D, G, B, E? Like how
Yeah.
many? I don't. Nearly every guitar, I probably couldn't find a guitar in this house that's tuned to that tuning. It's like most of mine are drop C,
Yep.
and I play in a few of the different tunings too. But so I think that was really necessary. Also at the time, a lot of bands were doing that. Soundgarden played in different tunings, not just
Yes.
drop tuning, but like really double drop D or
Yep.
an open tuning or something. Smashing Pumpkins did a lot of that,
Hmm.
which I was into, and they also used a lot of different effects pedals, which were really cool. And back then, kind of affordable too. Like I didn't have a great amp until once we had really truly started Age of Ruin, and I was out of high school and I started working, and I bought a Marshall stack, and um, but I had this Fender solid state combo amp that I used, and this distortion channel. Shit, I still have it. It's right there on the floor. It's a
The Princeton, yeah.
Princeton Chorus, and
Yeah.
it's solid state, and it's a crummy amp. The
Yes.
distortion channel is terrible.
I know it well.
Awful. It is a really bad distortion channel. The cleans channel, though, for a cheap solid state amp, sounds pretty good. It's very Fender-like, and it would take pedals well. Like you could throw a metal zone in it. You could throw like a big muff on it, and I wouldn't record with it today, of course. The speakers are garbage. It's an open back. It's not my thing. But just like that first guitar, this was the first amp I had like saved up to buy. My first practice amp was just a little crummy, like 10-inch, practice amp. But it was the first thing. It was what I learned on it. It would like inspire you to use these pedals. Like put a feature on, and then you could sound or put this is chorus pedal or a chorus combo. So that chorus channel would you sounded just like Come As You Are when you played that thing, right? Which was inspiring too. So So we would let each other, this friend of mine, John, and we'd loan each other these pedals and like swap ideas and stuff. We wrote songs together for the first time. None of it is good, but it was important, I think, in that time of my learning how to play and how to be a musician to have that. I think today you can really learn a lot off of watching YouTube or something, but it's really kind of the same thing. You're someone else is showing you in their own words how to do something that you can't get out of a magazine like we had. It was, with Guitar World, or there would be these books with transcriptions of all the songs, and I got those too, but I didn't get a lot out of them because it was difficult to read, and to make and to understand why how these notes all fit together. So yeah, I think a lot of that really like set the tone for what I've done, like what I've how I come back to a lot of that, and I've actually see it a lot in the younger generation today. In fact, they're very into grunge music now.
Hmm.
Um, but the acceptance of other people who are, you know, not mainstream. The punk culture was something that I always gravitated towards, punk and hardcore.
Hmm. Me too.
It, it's funny because there's this general acceptance of who you are there. There's also within it there can be cliques and there can be people that are exclusive within the scene.
Totally.
I
It's like
never,
it's like anything.
yeah, it is like anything. It's you see it today and you're like, ah, it's a shame, it shouldn't be
Hmm.
that. But that's just a microcosm of the general culture, which was and still is, in my opinion, very accepting,
Hmm.
of anybody. And that was part of what you were kind of talking to a minute ago, like the sexualization of everything in the '80s. I think we're seeing a lot of that today.
Hmm.
Not just today. I mean, it's pervasive always,
It
um,
is.
but that's very much in pop culture. And I think it's some of that is scary to younger people and not ready to. You have to be ready to start exploring that side of your of your personality,
You do. You absolutely do.
and so today is seeing acceptance of everyone at these hardcore shows. People wear baggy clothes. They just show up how they are, and that's something that's really important because it allows you to then you can't love other people if you can't love yourself. If you're then accepted by everyone for who you are, you have that ability to break that barrier down and then show mutual respect and start um, supporting other people too. So it's that mutual respect and mutual feeding off of each other that I really get a lot out of. And that's something that happens just naturally in music. It's kind of like you and I connecting from having just a random show together, in the outskirts of Philadelphia. Like I was like, oh, that guy's got some cool gear. Like look at that fan fret guitar and
But that's why music is so fucking cool, and that's why I love it, and that's why I will die doing it because it takes you to places that you never thought you'd be at, where you would do something really fucking cool, and you end up making some friends for life. You know, like some of my best friends in the whole music world, I met in like the diviest bar with there is maybe like a dozen people there to see us. Half of it was bands, and that's what that night was meant for. Because
yeah.
then we went off and played shows that were fucking packed and stuff like that. So I always look at everything. It's like, especially in terms of playing music and playing shows like that, it's all just pages in a book, different chapters, and it's part of like your story in the grand story of playing music. Because like my friend Josh, he's an engineer and a producer, and he said something to me one night while we were like tracking guitars that was I'll never forget it. It just summed everything up so perfectly. He was just like, and he's like 3 years younger than me, I guess. So we're, we came up at the same time. We have a lot of the same influences, everything like that, and grew up in the same area. He's like, the whole reason I do this is to be part of the grand story of music because it is a story, and we all get to have like our page in that grand story of music. And if somebody happens to turn to your page and like read your story on that page, well then great. But if not, at least it exists in that, in that grand book of the whole story of music. And I was like, hell's yeah, man. Yeah, fuck yeah, exactly. Exactly,
Yeah, I relate to that a lot. I think, it's part of, to me, art is part of the human experience.
Hmm.
And this is where I tend to be someone who is not frightened by the technology, by today, artificial intelligence, because I think I've always believed that the best music is written by someone who wants to hear the song that they want to hear. Like, so everything I
Yes.
write today, when I write a song, sure, it has influences. It could be, I could tell you out of the, I don't know how many songs we've written, but out of it, you could pick out a number of Age of Ruin songs, and I can tell you exactly where I ripped off that riff from, or where I stole it from. Um, there's some stuff on the new material where I just deliberately deliberately would take a nod to a melody of something else
Hmm.
because to me it's something that always struck me. It's like that I thought was beautiful, and I wanted to sort of nod to that in a way. Artificial intelligence can do maybe that much, where they can take what it's already heard and present it to you, but it cannot thus far create something new that will resonate with other people through the human experience, right?
Hmm.
Like in the art world, like Picasso, like that was, the Cubist sort of art movement was new. It wasn't something that AI could have generated because it had seen before and wanted to show you what it thought was perfect art, and I think that's very important. And I'd go back to that, I always write the song that I want to hear. Like there's stuff that really means a lot to me, and it's why I pick up the instrument and try to make that sound. But it's only of me. It's only my perspective. And when we hear other people's music, some of that relates, and some of it you think. I know I criticize other musicians where I'm like, man, they should have hit a different note there or whatever. Um, but it's perfect to them. It's how they perceive that song and how they
Hmm.
done by drawing on their influences too. And it's all part of that human experience. It's part of art imitates life, life imitates art, and um, emotion comes in. Is a huge factor in everything you do in music too. Um, I've been studying. There's you've probably heard of Sleep Token. I'm sure.
Totally. Yeah.
Massive band, right? Um, I've been really studying the music in my own way, just like why, like how did they come up with all of these different ideas? And it is very much. I feel like a lot of the songs are telling stories in their own way, and like I was saying before, it's a storytelling approach to writing music, in my opinion, where it starts with kind of like a laying like the introduction to what this story is going to be about, and then it some sort of clash or conflict happens within that, and that escalates into a climax, which is typical in a lot of their songs. They get into a loud, heavy section, and then that climax kind of draws to a close, and it comes back. And I think that's really a cool way of writing music.
Hmm.
Is thinking of it that way. Another influence that I have that I've never written a song where it's recorded with it fading out, and it's something I take from Neil Young or Nirvana or some of these bands in the that we listened to in the grunge era, where it's like if you haven't written the ending to the song's not written. It's like I think it's important to have that, like to fully flesh it out, and have that idea complete.
Hmm. I just heard a comedian say like the bass player in the other band I'm in. He sent me a really funny thing about a comedian basically saying that, just like, like if a songwriter just like fades out a song, like they never wrote the end. So that would be like me like telling a joke and then just telling it quieter. And then he says the same line, just like a little bit quieter. And then he repeats it again. It's a little bit quiet, and everybody starts laughing. And he's like, and he gets like to a whisper to where he's just like mouthing it. And then he's just like, that would have been way better to do at the end of the set. Like he's like in the
Yeah.
middle of his set. But yeah, no, I don't think I
It's
don't
a cool
believe.
effect. I'm not
Yeah,
entirely against it. I think
yeah,
there's,
no.
like the beginning to and Justice for All, there's a fading in guitar like line that's really cool. It's a cool effect for sure. I'm not saying it's wrong,
Mhm.
but I'm just saying again from my perspective, the songs I want to hear. To me, writing that perfect song, I never think of it that way. It's always there's always a reason for a lot of what we do. I think it's cool. Like it's a cool effect that you hear on some. I think there's maybe one or two Nirvana songs they've done this where they would fade out the music, but the vocals would stay loud.
Mhm.
On a plane or one of those songs where that
Yep.
is going real loud. I think that's kind of a cool effect. But
Yeah, I'm into that. So for me, it's like I don't think I've never done anything like that because I always have it in my mind like I'm gonna play this song live,
yeah,
so it has to have a definitive ending to get into the next song or whatever. But I also think that the way that I approach songs is like each song is like its own individual thing that is uh, kind of like a living, breathing thing that I'm just uncovering.
mm,
It already exists, and I'm really just like taking dirt off of it to see um, like how it flows together. That how it wants to flow, essentially, how it wants to work and how it wants to move. And it just ends up being like a really fun process to look at it that way because it's like you're communicating with the song as like an entity almost, and you're just like, all right, like all right, I got this much done with you today, we'll see what we get done tomorrow and everything. And it's kind of like, for me, it's like the song kind of lets you know like you did it, this is how I want it, this is me, you know and this is how I want to sound and everything like that. But no song has ever been like, we're gonna fade out. you know
yeah.
but I do enjoy really creative studio tricks like that of panning and stuff like that. And it's it's funny because like you hear more stuff like that in older music where it was like they had less to work with, so they had to be creative with what they had versus like, Christ, now you could just like you could take somebody's voice talking and make a complete and total vocal melody out of it and like just vocode it and everything like that. And it's like, you know, however many, like I was watching this one clip of Billie Eilish was talking about like a song she recorded, and she was just like, I did 100 takes for this song. And then the engineer is basically like he shows you like the screen of like how many clips, like seconds of takes. We're just like, here's 3 seconds of that take here, here's that, and it's all to craft the most perfect run of all of her vocal melodies according like how her breath was like during the. It's so like, whoa. It that is intense. Just think about like how many takes you do for something, and then it's just like, yeah, that's the best one. Going with that one. Some of it might be pieced together vocally, but like I know for me, like um guitar wise, it's like I do like an initial track it, and then like, all right, yeah, punch me in right there. I'm gonna overdub that, punch me in right there. I'm gonna double that, punch me in right there. I didn't like that. It was a little skronk right there. Let me fix that, and then it's done. But it's not like 50 guitar tracks that are just like pieced together to make like an entire song, you know?
Yeah, I think I've done it a little bit both ways. I wouldn't say is maybe to that extreme. I I remember watching some of the documentaries on the making ofs, and the Black Album was heavily punched, and there's but it does sound nearly perfect. It's
Hmm.
what they were going for. There's also an art to we will record music and have a lot of ideas about layers and textures to things that will make a recording sound a lot better. I'm not saying this is 2 hours. Again, this is how I want to write the song that I think sounds perfect. So what happens then is we'll be done with the song in the studio, and then we'll say to ourselves, how the hell are we going to play that? Like, we don't have 50 guitar players, you know what I mean? We can't, like,
Hmm.
no one doing all these overdubs. So then the song, because you have to evolve that into a live, um, performance of that song.
Hmm.
Focus on but that, I think, to me, there's a lot of fun in that. You know, trying to manifest what you've created in the studio in a live performance can be a lot of fun, and it can be a matter of drawing in other musicians to help support in certain support roles, or it can be just a pared down version of what you put on tape.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. Like, especially for the Blade stuff I just recorded. I did a lot of Ebo stuff in it just to layer. Because I I don't know any violin players, so I was just like, well, I can do it with an Ebo, you know? Um, but there's just no way that I could pull off live what I did for this recording. As far as like how I layered stuff, how many layers I did. But it's also I approach it like the studio recording is a different animal versus what you're seeing live. And the studio recording is like your permanent mark of what everything you wanted to do for the song that you were able to do while you were in the studio. And when you come to see the band live, you're seeing what they have available, or you're seeing like what you have available to try and basically like recreate it as best as you can, which can be a really interesting experience as well.
Yeah.
And I used to have this mindset of like, if I can't do it live, I'm not recording it like that. When I was like really young, it was just like it was all about the live show. The live show had to be better than the recording, you know, and because it was all about coming to see you live and all that stuff. And as I grew as a musician and everything, and appreciated just being in a studio and really soaking in the whole studio experience and everything you have available to you to do on a recording. My perspective I've changed of like there's so many ways to look at this and approach it. Um, you know, so and again, I'm sure that like you go back to previous recordings you've done, and since you've grown so much and you've evolved so much as a musician, you always think like, I could have done this here, I could have done that there, and it's just like now I have the perspective of like I don't want to feel that way about recordings. I want to feel like I did everything I wanted to do on that recording. And like that's what I'm going to hear for the rest of my life on that recording. I'm going to hear everything I wanted to do, did do, and the best I could do it, you know.
I think I 100% agree with that. I think you should try to do everything you can within the framework of your budget too. There's a
Hmm.
priority that you have to put down with the foundation of the song. Everything needs to be in tune, so you shouldn't just put something on something if you're not fully comfortable. I'm just saying, like, in terms of giving advice to young musicians,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
do what you can with the tools you have, because you can make things so much more profound. But make sure it's deliberate and that it sounds good. But I would argue that no matter how much you put into something and try to make it sound the best you can right then, that 10 years from now you'll listen back and think, I should have done this differently. I mean, there are, and the way we get around that, because there can be this paralysis that happens to musicians specifically in the studio,
Yeah,
keep trying and
totally.
trying to make perfect something,
Right.
and um, if it's never finished, it doesn't matter how perfect it is. You know,
Hmm.
if it's not done, then you are not successful. You did not succeed. So
Hmm.
you have to come to terms with something becoming final and accepting that you finished it and moving on. And I mean, there are guitar solos I put on this record that's not even out yet that I wish I had played differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because now I've played each one of those solos another 200 or 300 times,
Right, right, right.
my own rehearsals or with rehearsing with the band or whatever. And now I play, maybe there's
It's
a,
evolved.
yeah, there's a bend or some vibrato I put on a note that sounds cooler, a pinch squeal or something, that I play it differently now. And that evolution of the way you play and your style is what keeps it fun and entertaining, and what drives me personally to be more creative. Just because if you're going to be in a band that you want to pursue and be serious about it, you have to accept that you're going to play the songs that you've written a lot of times.
Hmm.
You'll hear this from you go watch, David Gilmour play the solo, like one of these classic solos, um, and and it isn't exactly like the record, because
Hmm.
some of those records were recorded 30, 40 years ago. There's some
Yeah.
subtleties where I'm sure those musicians hear those things and say, like, man, I would have played it like this today, or I would have used this piece of equipment. The decisions we make that make things final make things successful, because that allows it to be out there for other people to hear, and you
Hmm.
have to come to terms. So there is a balance, I think, in making music, of accepting that you've done what you like. It's good enough. It's the best you could do within the schedule, and being able to accept with moving on, because um there's songs that we I like from my band's catalog that I wish the recording sounded better. You could go and re-record it, right? But you're sacrificing the amount of time that you could have taken to record a new song, and come up with new ideas, if you're going to put that as a priority to redo something you've already done. So I think it's important to. I'm not saying, well, my band has re-recorded songs. We
Hmm.
do, um, um, but I also like moving forward and looking towards the future, and incorporating new ideas and drawing from new influences, um, creatively. So
Speaking of Age of Ruin, how did you guys all come together? Because you guys have been a band for a very long time.
yeah, this band started in 1998.
Yeah.
Um, some of the things you were saying earlier, like Unearth, we played shows with. We were contemporaries. I would say our contemporaries of.
Hmm.
Um, that was a time where, by the time I was out of high school, my friends and I were starting to get exposed. In high school too, we were starting to get exposed to punk rock and hardcore, and underground music, and started going to local shows and seeing some like death metal bands and getting into that scene. The new wave of Swedish heavy metal that came over, At the Gates, Entombed, In Flames, Dark Tranquillity, um, you know, some of those earlier bands that we really were influenced by, Carcass, um, was something that we really dug. But we also came from this grunge era where very simplified, like, guitars and loud and chords, and that's where I kind of was drawn to hardcore, because it was the music was a little bit more simple. So we had these elements from both sides, like very melodic and difficult to play death metal stuff, mashed in with hardcore and punk.
Mhm.
And we, as friends, how did we come together? We were all into the same scene, into the same music, and we were really the four of us at the time. We were four piece. Were really good friends. In fact, the bass player is my younger brother, still today, and so we just that was the first band. I mean, it was really the guy I mentioned before who said where we said, hey, you should play drums and I should play guitar, was one of my best, if not my best friend, at the time, and still am friends with today, longest friend I've ever had. We all just got together and just decided we wanted to make music, and that was what we produced. And so we somewhat evolved at the time. The movement, that style of mashing metal and hardcore together became known as metalcore, and we were in that group of bands on the East Coast that were sort of defining that sound. A lot of those bands really took it a lot further, and I don't have any personal regrets, but I focused a lot on I was getting into my career and in technology, but I never really dropped it. And I think one thing that's really cool about music, and what's also, in my opinion, can be accepting of our scene, is that there's young bands and older bands like ourselves that are still, can still do it together and still share a stage and have a good time. And I think it's really important to now. I know when I was younger that I learned so much from those bands, that those elders that we shared stages with, that things like pack up your gear and get off the stage to show respect to the next band,
Mhm.
so that they have time to be prepared for their performance. Get there early to load in. Like a lot of these like really important life lessons you learn as a musician. There's no class in high school. There's
No, there's not.
no manual that you study. No one wrote a book, how to be in a band for dummies or anything.
Band etiquette, live
Yeah,
show etiquette,
and you learn that from bands who have been around. And for us, I think I like to give back. I like to give back to the community that showed me the way. And so, when we play shows, it's pretty common for Age of Ruin to backline. We bring our cabs because we have really good, gear. Stuff is so expensive now. I mean, I don't really even buy gear now because the prices have skyrocketed so much.
Hmm.
The cost of there's become, in addition to musical instruments as what they are, tools, as instruments, have now also become this it's kind of a investment, like people buy them just to collect, like a collector's piece. You
Hmm.
see that with guitars, you see that with amplifiers, you see that with
Pedals for
pedals,
sure.
and it's kind of crazy that it's turned like that. I I can remember that friend of mine I was telling you that we would trade guitar licks back and forth. He let me borrow a 90s Sovtek Big Muff Pie, big Bach green,
Hmm.
probably tall font or bubble font. And another friend came over, and he was making fun of it and said it was just garbage because he was like a Megadeth fan and he didn't like, those cheesy sounds that Smashing Pumpkins, they were the ones that used that pedal.
Hmm.
So he smashed it like in front of me. He was like, "This thing sucks," and he
Oh my
literally
God.
destroyed that pedal. Those things are like $500, $600 now,
They
right?
are. Yeah. Yeah, they
I have
are.
I have another one. Of course, because they were so great, I ended up getting one in the late '90s, early 2000s for probably 20 to $30.
Yeah.
It was this big hunky box. It didn't take a power supply. You had to have a 9-volt battery. It was
Yeah.
goofy. I remember the input and output on the pedal are opposite
Hmm.
from what's common today, where there's this path that goes kind of from right to left. The input and output were opposite. It was just kind of crazy, and I think it's weird that our instruments have turned into a collector's item, rather than just tools for doing what you do. I don't. Um,
It's very oversaturated. Like it'll make your head spin. Like I was talking to a friend earlier who's 2 years older than me, and he was in a band in high school and stuff like that, and they did covers, and he sang, played acoustic guitar, but that was it. And now he's he's found himself in with a bunch of musicians who are kind of seasoned, and he's doing vocals, but he's also doing rhythm guitar. And he's like, I'm learning about like guitars and amps and like pedals and stuff. And like my head is just like, whoa, this is like an endless hole. And I'm like, dude, I'm like, now you can understand why guitar players have an abundance of guitars, amplifiers, and pedals because like you can make yourself sick searching for tone. I have. It's like I had I had to stop myself from scrolling Reverb and eBay for like a little while because I was like, I don't need any more stuff.
yeah,
I just don't. Like I need to work with what I got and like squeeze all the juice out of everything that I have because I have plenty
mm,
to get plenty of sounds, and it's like, do I really need I just look at it like I need a guitar and a backup guitar for a band. Then I need my pedal board, an amp, a cabinet. That's it, right? But it's like you see, oh, well, there's that guitar, and like I could do this to it, and yada yada yada. And it's just, and you're
it's
this pedal's got this overdrive's got a different tone. Like it's like before you know it, it's like
it'll
you're
drive you mad. It'll drive you people mad. And
it
what
really
a lot
will.
of people don't entirely understand is that what they hear on a recording has from that guitar has been captured by a microphone that has character, has gone through an EQ or
Compression, everything.
compression.
Yeah,
Then
EQ,
then there's layers of music on top of that.
right.
So a lot of times young guitar players will, especially in metal, they'll plug in a guitar in and they just crank the distortion all the way up.
Hmm.
And because they feel like that's what it sounds like on music recordings. So they also double track it. So a lot of the heavier music tends to be double tracked or quadruple tracked, which adds thickness, adds a little bit of more sort of perceived distortion.
Hmm.
Bass is then filling up the low end. So you're not intended to turn your amplifier on and sound like what you heard on a Pantera record,
Right.
like verbatim. Like it won't. It does. That's not what it. So a lot of times people are very caught by surprise when they hear one of us just strum one of our amps because it's not as distorted as you would believe. Like
Right.
the key to heavier music, to a lot of like what's really enjoyed by a lot of people is that you can hear there's clarity in the note.
Yes.
Hear the melody, you can hear what's going on, and if you crank the gain up and scoop the mids out, the mids are where it's the guitar is a mid instrument.
Exactly.
It's
Yes.
in the mid range. You're from like 500 hertz to 2500, maybe 5000 or so.
Yeah.
It's all mid range. That's what the guitar is. That's the part of
It's where it
the
sits in the
spectrum
mix.
where it belongs. So you scoop all the mids out, you've just defeated the whole point of
Right.
Um, so I think that's kind of something that's pretty interesting. But there's also a lot of the technology that is out, available today that is just blows my mind. Like the plugins and the
Dude, the
um,
modelers are mind
modules.
blowing.
It's insane. They sound really good in a way that I am a traditionalist. I know this of you too.
Me,
You
I'm
play
absolutely a
through amps,
traditionalist. Yes.
you play through guitars and amp. I like to. I feel like I need the cabinet and amplifier on stage for me, because to me it's part of the whole instrument, because
Right.
I use the air from the cabinet to
You nailed it.
induce feedback in my guitar intentionally. So I
Right.
will point my pickups at my cabs and parts of the music to draw from that. But I'm also rehearsed enough to be able to tame that. So I try my best to never have incidental feedback, like by mistake, because I keep a gate on my guitar when I want it. But I'll also turn like my overdrives off and use the amp as more of a crunch or a clean amp, and I like to play off of that, and that's something that as a personal choice I really enjoy. But I do not criticize any of these musicians today that show up with just a quad cortex on the floor and they go right through the PA, because it sounds outstanding, and
It
that's
does.
it really has come to that outstanding. And at home, I have a Boss Katana that I use for a practice amp.
I do too.
It's also inspiring. Like it sounds good enough to me that I don't have to sit there and focus on tweaking something. What I can focus on is me, my fingers, uh, hearing what I want to hear, getting my technical chops up. Stop wasting your time dicking around with your gear, guys. Like focus on the music. And I think that's what these modelers really allow people to do. I think there's place for both in the world today, and I think there really has been for a long time. The criticism of the earlier modelers was due, right, because some of it did sound cheesy, but
It
like
needed time.
but Weezer recorded on a pod.
Yes.
There's it
They did a
it's
pod tour.
you were talking about technology early on, and I think it was gosh, I'm not a Beatles fan, but I appreciate their music at least. And one of their tracks has like a real loud distorted guitar on it, and it was just they drove the preamp in the recording on the recording desk to get that sound, and so they just gamed the hell out of it. It's not a distortion pedal, and when I listen to it, I think it sounds terrible, but it was something innovative at the time, you
Hmm.
know. Um, and so that right there is like, it's not necessarily um, it's all about trying to take this instrument and make it sound it's so diverse, like you were talking earlier about how I don't have a violin player in my band, right? But I use this EBow so I could get sort of a similar effect.
Hmm.
It's crazy that this instrument can do that.
Yep.
Everything from an acoustic guitar strumming cowboy songs, cowboy chords, to the things you're talking about, um, delays and tremolos, and now phase, not phase, but like pitch shifting, and even that technology is crazy. You can plug a pedal in and drop tune by a couple of steps, and it tracks and sounds like a guitar that's in that tuning.
I know. I
It's
know. Yeah. There's a band I know that everybody in the band has the drop tuners because they just, oh, we're an A for the song, and oh, we're back to normal for the song. But
There's
you
no
said
change guitars. Oh, hang on, we got to go change
right.
guitars.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah. Yeah.
boom,
You
we're right
you
here.
you said the most important part of the difference between amps and modelers, which is the air push, right? I understood the air push very early on as a guitar player. I understood that air push means you're getting the most out of your amp and your guitar. And I think the first time I heard that was when I heard like Van Halen, the first Van Halen album. You can hear it in the Brown sound. You can hear it in Eddie's tone. And
Yeah,
it's so funny because when you completely understand like Eddie Van Halen's tone, his tone comes from the wall. He's just pulling power from the wall into his amp. His amp is completely cranked, and then it's like there's no distortion pedal or anything. He's just controlling everything with his volume knob. But you can hear the tubes pushing the speakers and the air like coming out of the speakers, and you can't get that with a modeler. It
yeah,
just doesn't do that. And as far as like working with like excess like when if you work with excessive gain like that and work with feedback to musically with your amp, that's another thing that you can't really, it's not the same with a modeler. And you're right, like I I especially playing in Blades, we play with a lot of bands where a dude just walks on stage and he's got this little thing, he's like right into the PA, and like that's it, that's what he's playing. And like, yeah, you can hear him through the PA, but there's nothing of him on stage,
Yeah. I
which
don't
to
know.
me, that would drive me nuts.
I don't know how they deal with that very well. I know a lot of people. We have played with in ears, and we tend to not. But it is something that's foreign to me personally. And it's maybe just because of my upbringing, like what I'm comfortable with.
Hmm.
But I very, like I said before, I think to me the amplifier is part of the instrument. You know, it's
Hmm.
I'm I'm okay with carrying this shit.
Yeah.
Let's face it, it's like bringing these amps and cabs. They're heavy. They're
Yes.
but to me that's important. That's what it takes.
It's
So if
part of the deal.
you're okay with that, then you know it's that's my perspective. I like it. I prefer it. I'm also and even to clarify at that point, um, not even like a combo amp is good enough for me. Like
No.
I'm a half stack.
Yeah.
Typically, we play with full stacks, and the reason for that is not because it's like threatening looking and imposes on stage, but 100% because that top speaker is at the right body level for my pickups to feed
Hmm.
off of that sound. For
Oh
it
yeah.
has to be at that level, and then on top of that, we typically use our amps as on stage monitors too. Like you were saying, the stage volume is not there for bands with that are using these modelers, and it's especially noticeable when you see a lineup at a show where you see bands that have both approaches, because there's also something to an amplifier which sits a little bit further back from the front of house speakers, still adding to that fullness of the sound in the entire room.
Yeah.
Um, the
Exactly.
particularly for like larger cabinets that then also resonate with the floor, you start shaking the floor a little bit, and you get a little bit more of that volume in the venue. What did take a long time as a young musician to learn was the entire presentation of a show involves those people that are supporting your band while you're playing, which includes the sound engineer, the lighting engineer,
Hmm.
the audience, which is the most important part of a show. Um, and in order for it to be enjoyable for everyone and work really well, you, a lot of bands, these younger bands that do bring these large amps, don't understand that you have to turn down. And
Yes.
if you are playing so loud that the front of house sound engineer not only cannot put you in the mix because you've already drowned out all of the other instruments that they can deal with, um, but you're also then imposing on all of those other people, including the audience, because you're now drowning out what the sound engineer can even can even work with,
Yeah.
and that becomes most of these amps, these master volume amps that we use today, they sound fine if you turn them down a bit. You're
Totally.
not. This isn't, again, to your point earlier about trying to manifest the music in a live situation is different than what you would do in a recording situation. Um, we're not here at this show. First of all, you're not playing the Reading Festival, okay? So even if you were, the acoustics of that amphitheater are going to color your sound so much that it doesn't really matter if you turn your master volume down a little bit and it affects your gain structure or the natural harmonics of whatever. You've already got so many other influences involved that you need to get off of your little ego chair, stand and turn your amp down and let everyone work with it.
Right.
That's what such a massive speaking back to talking a little bit back to learning from the elders, from the people that um, came before us and taught us the ropes. That was a pretty big important thing to learn, and it's very common. It's there's memes about it all over the place. It's like the guitar player then after sound check turns it up. It's like you're not doing. You're actually it's a selfish act because everyone else on that stage then suffers because of it. You know,
Yes.
if your drummer says, "Hey, I can't."
Guilty as charged when I was in my early 20s, you know?
Same here. I'm only saying this because of experience.
Yeah.
And if you're playing a show and a drummer turns to you and says, "I can't hear you," don't reach for the volume knob.
Yeah.
The first thing you should do is talk to the sound engineer or turn the
Turn
amp
turn your amp.
so it's facing them, and then learn from that. Every show we play an opportunity for us to learn and get better. If it's a venue we've played at, believe me, when we played with you up at that venue, I was taking notes. If my band is ever in this room again, these are the things I would do differently.
Hmm.
So and by doing that, so now I've trained myself to be better at that particular stage. But you can also then apply it to other situations. And so the day we arrived at that venue, we're already planning based on, okay, there's not a lot of, particularly that room didn't have a lot of place for equipment to be staged for setup. So we're already talking with your band and the other bands and saying, okay, what equipment should we share? How can we make this work better? Again, for the audience, for the venue, for the owners, and everything to make the show work as well as it can. It's not sacrificing your own performance by doing that and by trying to be a better team player, you know. Um, but it all really comes into, and also that stage was a smaller stage, so I can guarantee you my master volume on that amp was probably like one or less.
Hmm.
It's hard to believe that these amps, when you turn them to one, you're still talking like 110 decibels.
Oh yeah. They're
It's
still
like
loud.
most people don't understand what that really means. Like 110 decibels, and I know this because I have a decibel meter in my live room over here, um, will cause hearing damage.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like,
It absolutely does.
and that's, those, speaking of like all the tools we have as instruments, your ears are prized, and no technology, no science today has been able to restore lost hearing
Yeah.
without literally what hearing aids are amplifiers. It's a
Hmm.
personal amplifier that's inside your ear that's then broadcasting. It's a microphone with a PA system that's just
Yeah.
broadcasting what it's hearing outside of you, and it's really important to protect your ears too. So
How long you been wearing earplugs? I started when I was 21.
not that early. I wish I did. Probably when I was 30 or so. And I'll tell you, I carry them me everywhere I go.
So do I.
I wear them at every show I'm at.
Yep.
And I actually love that's accepted now today. I do think when I was young, and probably, we grew up together. Would you say this too, that I think my friends maybe it was kind of geeky or
You're
dorky.
not hardcore.
Yeah, like to make fun of you for it, like you were a dork or like a wuss or whatever.
It was frowned upon, but to me, when I put earplugs in, I could hear everything. When I
But
had them out, it all just sounded like overbearing noise. And I mean, that's kind of like a little bit of my tism too. Like I'm very, very sound sensitive.
yeah,
So the minute that I put earplugs in, and especially like at band practice too, it was like, oh, this is so much better. But the problem was that, and I didn't learn this until later on, was I would mess with my EQ on my guitar amp. So I'd want to hear what I wanted to hear, or how I wanted to sound. The problem was when I took my earplugs out, it was a very sharp tone. So it was just like I had to remember that I have to dial this in first
yeah.
without earplugs in, and this
Mhm.
is how it's going to sound. And then when I put my earplugs in, I have to accept that this is how it sounds.
There
Yeah,
is, there's also, I'm sure you have invested in better earplugs too.
totally.
The quality of what you're using, that when we were young, it would be everything from like a napkin that you rolled up and put into your ear, which still
Yeah,
does, but that
it's better than nothing.
the frequency spectrum is not uh, reduced in a linear way, um, like you would think when you're blocking sound. Low frequencies are going to come through
Hmm.
a lot easier. You will actually feel low frequencies in your bones, which then rattle inside of your head. So
Hmm.
um, I think you're dead on. It does shape the EQ, perceived EQ a lot. Um, but then there's also a lot of to being a better musician. In When I was younger, I would need to hear myself more, probably because I wasn't as confident in
Hmm.
my playing. And if I couldn't hear myself, I would lose confidence, and I would need that. It was a crutch of sorts, Um, I can tell you there's shows we played with and without in ears where I couldn't hear myself on stage at all. But I've come to be able to. I actually practice a lot of times. I'll practice without even looking at the neck while I'm playing, or close my eyes or play in the dark.
Hmm.
Um, um, and then also just it comes through just years of experience of. It doesn't have to be years of experience, but definitely through rehearsal and through iteration of doing it and doing it over and over again, to just being so confident that you know your instrument very well, and you know that you're still the sound that's coming out. You have to have trust in the sound engineer and the other people that are involved. I think that a younger me would have turned the amp up. I can't hear myself, so I need to turn up. And then you're causing all the problems we've already discussed. So yeah,
Yeah, it's we're very lucky because now, like you said, the choice of earplugs that you can get now for like $30 are amazing. But that's just like that's just bottom of the barrel, like run of the mill earplugs. Like there's a band I know in Philly where the guitar player, that's part of his job is he makes custom earplugs for people.
oh, that's cool.
And he's just like, yo, he's like, yeah, come see me, man. Like, you're gonna spend $100, but like this is gonna be like nothing you've ever experienced in terms of like how you're actually gonna hear music now and like a live setting and everything. And I was just like, wow, that I mean, I've never used in-ears, so I don't know what that experience is like. I have religiously worn earplugs, like I said, since I was 21.
That's good.
And even at shows, like playing on stage, everything there's no way that I could play a show without earplugs. It would just be overbearing for me to hear anything. I'd just be like, this is I can't pick out anything. It's just too much. But
Yeah, I try to. I have a problem where they'll fall out, so I'll have like a spare pair on stage. But I also the other thing is they make them now where they actually kind of look cool. I was like fiddling on my desk because I have this Altoids 10 uh, right here. This is like my earplug graveyard. I
mhm.
have like there's this one. It's got like this metal sort of look on the end.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
This one's called Loop. It's this company, and they kind of look like. So I have a bunch of earrings.
Yeah.
So it fits in. So not only do they also kind of look cool. They're fashionable too. So there's really no excuse for people to not be wearing them at shows, especially other people's music. Why would you want to damage your hearing? Like I could understand
Totally.
when bands play and they want to be able to hear everything on stage and it's part of their experience and emotion. Fine, you're you're taking a risk, but
Right.
it's like it's interesting because there's so much more to it. It's not just it's all accumulative, right? The damage. Um, I own an old Jeep. That's been my vehicle since I was, you know, in college. I still have it, and I would it's been my daily driver forever. It's you know
Oh, the wind noise.
Yeah, so I remember going to shows in my 20s. Maybe it was in my 20s when I started wearing earplugs. Yeah. But more religiously when I was in my 30s. But I do remember going, so from DC, Richmond is about 2 hours drive. It's 100 miles south of DC.
Mm,
Baltimore, Baltimore is like an hour north of DC. I live on the southwest side of DC, so an hour and a half. So it's very convenient for us to be able to get up to a lot of different cities. So I do remember going to shows to see other bands play in Baltimore or in Richmond. And my Jeep is so loud on the highway that I would wear earplugs while the bands were playing. But my drive to Richmond and my drive back home, when I would lay down in bed, I would have my ears would be ringing.
yes.
It's because the top of my Jeep is so loud, and I would turn the radio up to be loud enough to hear it.
Yeah.
That even that was enough to cause hearing damage. So you can't.
Yeah, wind noise is a real thing. Like I ride motorcycles and that's you have to have earplugs when you ride a motorcycle because the wind noise is so intense once you get to highway speed. Um, like people that I rode with when I was a lot younger, like they didn't wear earplugs, and I would just think to myself, like, it is like you are getting hearing damage when we're going fast. It's undeniable. I was just like, I don't know how you guys are like, and they were nuts. They would take like we were all on sport bikes, so they would take off and just like on highways and like be doing like 100 miles an hour at night, and it's just like the wind just going that speed on a sport bike is intense in itself. You're you're risking a lot, um, but the wind noise is enough to drive you insane. Like logistically, like it sounds like war, you
Yeah.
know. So for me, when I would ride like that, I had earplugs in, and it was almost like being in a silent movie. Like, yeah, it may seem like chaos like all around me, but like inside my helmet is like the calm, like the eye of the storm. Like it was calm inside my helmet. And then it dawned on me, it's just like maybe that's how MotoGP riders like are able to do that, and like guys that ride like the Isle of Wight, that's like the most dangerous race in the world. And I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe they just have really good earplugs, or because it just seems like you have like in your helmet is like you're in a separate world in your helmet versus the outside world, but you have to be completely calm and centered while you're riding like that, and just riding a motorcycle in general. Every time you get on a bike, you're putting your life on the line. No matter how fun it is, no matter how enjoyable of an experience it is a dangerous thing to ride a motorcycle. And I will say that, always. But the way that you can take some of the like shock factor to your senses is wearing earplugs and really good earplugs.
Mm.
Um, because like wind and traffic can startle you in such a way that like you can like stiffen up. Like the worst thing you could do when you ride a motorcycle is stiffen up. Like you kind of have to be very loose on a motor, like your top part of your body has to be very loose and fluid with the handlebars, because if you get stiff, you're absorbing everything from the road, and then that's how you crash. But yeah, I understand. Like I had a Jeep Cherokee, it's like a 97 Jeep Cherokee, and like yeah, I understand like the road noise inside of them. With what year's your Jeep? Is it like an old CJ or something?
It's a '92. It's a Wrangler, but it's from the early models.
Do you have a hard top on it?
No top.
You, oh, okay. So do you even put a soft top on it?
No.
Nothing. You're just you all right. You're like
There's
raw
a
dogging that Jeep.
Yeah, I mean, I took the top off probably 15 or 20 years ago, and I just never put it back on.
Yeah.
No doors, nothing. I mean, I have more than one vehicle.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a '93 pickup truck if it's like so rainy I can't possibly drive.
Mm,
And then in terms of like the musical equipment, we'll use a van, you know. That's my Jeep is, yeah,
I understand it's your toy.
yeah. I mean,
My motorcycle's
it's
my
kind of
toy. I
it's
get it.
just like a motorcycle in a way.
Yeah.
A lot of people like will ask you, they'll be so shocked. I'm sure you get the same questions with a motorcycle. You show up and people are like, "You drove that today?" and it's raining or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, what else was I
Totally.
gonna drive?" Like, yeah, I told you I was coming. This is how I
Right.
like. I have
Right.
a friend of mine, Ken. He plays in a couple of different hardcore bands. There was a time I needed to borrow his van for an Age of Ruin show, and so he drove my Jeep home, and I took his van home, and then we swapped a couple of days later. But he was telling me when we swapped back, he was like, "Dude, I looked out the window in the morning, and there was a squirrel inside of your Jeep. Like, there's like wildlife inside of your car." And I was
Right.
like, "So?"
Yeah.
Like, just some people just don't understand it. They think like your car is like a home or something. Like it's like got to be sealed and maybe that's why people are so comfortable with expressing road rage because they think they're invisible inside of these boxes. But I think of the Jeep as very similar to like a motorcycle. It's like a lot of you're exposed and people can see you right in and see
You
what
are, yeah, you're
you can't
connected to the outside road.
you can't pick your nose without someone seeing it. I
No.
mean, it's like it and the elements. So but I don't know. It's just water if it rains.
Yeah. Yeah. I've rode through the rain. I've rode through the snow. I've rode in ice. I rode in an ice storm once. I mean I got caught in that by stupidity, but and I would never want to do that again. But yeah, it's it's just, it's different kind of, you're very in the moment when you're in a vehicle like that. Like I've ridden in Jeeps where the top's off and everything like that, and a friend of mine used to have a Bronco, like an old school Bronco with the top off and everything like that. And yeah, it was you're just you're right. You're just you're connected to everything around you, in a way that, if you're in a luxury car where like the the cabin is like soundproof to the degree where all you hear is like the radio inside. You can't hear any road noise whatsoever. It's like, yeah, you are in your own world in that car. Like some people, a lot of people like that. I totally understand that. There's that's a whole different thing. But yeah, I'm kind of on your side of the line. I like I like things a little bit more raw and real, and the visceral feeling of the wind and like all
Yeah,
that stuff. It's like I said, it makes you very present with what you're doing, and you have to pay attention to everything you're doing. So, is your Jeep stick? Is it manual?
it is. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
So
Exactly. And that's another thing. People are like, people look at
it's
a
definitely
stick shift like, you could drive that, and it's like, yeah, it's fun. you know?
it is. Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. It's theft deterrence. I mean, it no so few people can drive them now. No one will take it.
Yes. And
And
that's the other thing. Yeah, none of them will steal your car. It's manual.
I'm not. I don't. I'll tell you, I'm not like a big. I don't particularly enjoy driving as like a hobby or anything. It's just to get to and from. So I'll drive it to if I need something, go get
Right,
something.
right.
I have to go to the studio or whatever. But a lot of times I'm carpooling or riding with someone else or taking a train or whatever. That it's really not like it's a huge part of my life. But because of that, it's paid for and it's costs like almost nothing in insurance because it's
Right.
so um,
Yeah.
and it's very reliable. So um,
Hmm.
but
That would totally be my toy, though. I like driving. I like operating machines and everything like that. So
there's
I would,
something to it. I enjoy getting in and maybe driving, putzing around the neighborhood because it is fun to do. It's not fun when it's getting onto the road to commute or to like traffic light to traffic light to traffic light, and it doesn't matter that it's a manual. If it was an automatic, it would suck too.
it's still, yeah, traffic sucks anyway.
when the part of the driving is the chore of getting to somewhere, that's not something I enjoy. It's I mean I'm not I don't hate it or protest, but um, so for the folks that have a very comfortable luxury car, it's something it is nice. I've gotten into vehicles like that and blown away by the contemporary technology. Everything's Bluetooth and GPS is crazy and everything.
You ever been in a Tesla?
I have.
It's very interesting.
I've driven one. I've driven a friend's Tesla, and I've been in and driven a Cybertruck or whatever.
Oh, really? I've never been in a Cybertruck.
I didn't particularly care for it.
I could understand that.
It was very. It's like the steering wheel is like it's not a wheel so much as it's like a joystick kind of.
I could. It's
Yeah,
like Knight Rider.
yeah, and if I remember correctly, you can even accelerate by pushing, or there's something, maybe buttons. It was very much kind of like a joystick, and it did have a sense of it was kind of a video game operating within. It was enormous on the inside.
Mm.
Um, it, it it did accelerate very fast. It was incredibly fast in its acceleration, but I mean, I just think they're my personal opinion. I think they're fucking hideous, and
It's not a truck.
it's not a truck
It's
exactly. I
not a
was
truck.
about to say the utility of it. I have a 1993 Ford F-150 where I can go and pick up 2 yards of mulch or
That's a
sheet,
truck.
a sheet of plywood.
Right.
Uh, that's the utility side of it. So
Well, my friend.
I have a cat that just knocks some stuff over.
No, it's okay. I
Cool.
enjoy
Well,
animals.
this was great. It was cool catching up and learning some of your.
Yeah, I would talk to you more, but unfortunately, I have to get in bed in 20 minutes because I gotta wake up at like 3:45, 4 a.m. for work tomorrow. It's gonna suck.
Dang, man.
Yeah, I work for the Department of Transportation, so sometimes those mornings start very early.
For Philadelphia, for
For
state.
uh for PennDOT, PA
Okay.
dot. So um I basically work in roadway construction. I'm a consultant in roadway construction and everything that's happening when they build bridges and roadways and stuff like that. And there's a certain book of specifications that contractors have to follow on how things are done and work items and how it's paid for, and it's all really boring shit. It's not what we just talked about. That's why I love having these conversations with people, especially musicians and guitar players, because it's like this is life to me.
Maybe this would be good to close on, but I think of the jobs that we do. It's important to not music is a difficult industry to make money and excel in. I think for it's partially its own. It just has to be that way because it's so exciting and draws so many people to it that and like you and I, there's this almost this perception that anyone can do it, which I think is really good. Everyone, most people who are born, healthy and everything, with good hearing and somewhat of pitch, pretty much everyone can sing along to something. There's like music is something that's in all of us. Um, but Rick Rubin there was an interview I watched with him, and he was saying, if the musicians that have to do it for a living are the worst musicians out there because they write their music, or maybe he said it in a more positive way. It was like the best musicians. Maybe that's probably how he did it, right? Knowing Rick Rubin, the best musicians aren't doing it for money. That's not the driver. And the point is that a lot of these bands that have to write the sophomore album, there's a lot of or a follow up to a successful song.
A
There's a
lot of
lot of
pressure.
pressure to make that happen again, to duplicate that. And
Hmm.
what happens is that people will fall into something that's a little bit more comfortable or known, and not take risks with their music, and write like kind of cookie cutter music or whatever, maybe to their genre or whatever. And um, and I think that's what allows us to do it is the fact that our livelihoods allow us. We earn our living through another way, but our music is entirely driven by the art and by the emotion and passion for it.
Totally.
Um, until one of us can cross that threshold of being able to make money playing music, it's important to do something that still allows you to do it on the side.
Hmm.
I think most of the musicians I know that are very successful have a job that allows their schedule to be open to being able to play music and um, doesn't really box them into a corner. So, um, you
I've
know,
built my life around being able to play music, so I get it.
yeah,
I changed careers um to be able to be active in these two bands I'm in right now. Because the other thing that we should close on is it takes money to play music.
yeah, it does.
It takes a lot of money to be in like just an amateur band as well. Like that's something that people forget all the time. It's like gear costs a lot of money. Recording your album costs money. Getting merchandise, it all costs money. And that's just the sad truth of it all. It's like you're funding all of it. So, and it's nothing's cheap.
A lot of people don't realize that, and they don't understand the investment. I think that's why the best supporters of music are other musicians, like
They
people
absolutely are.
who understand. If you play a show and the attendance is low that night, you're going to take a big hit.
Yeah. Buy their
But
t-shirt,
yeah, buy
you
a
know?
t go to the simplest things like commenting on a post or liking it or making sure you follow their streams and things like that are really actually mean something to musicians um, and I particularly today attendance has been down in shows across the board. It's widely known.
Yeah,
I think it's really important to just remember that those people in your communities that are doing art are still doing it and they're going to. You and I are going to keep doing it.
totally.
But if everyone's going to enjoy, you know, um, all of that benefit from it as a community, it really makes a difference when you support other musicians. So, but it's been cool. It's been fun talking to you. And
Right on, man. Yeah, we'll do it again. So what I like to do is if you have like a release or something coming up, let me know.
okay,
Um, that's I think it's good to kind of hear the story of like, oh, what are you releasing? How to come to be, like all that stuff. So,
will do.
and
We've got the band, the Age of Ruin has. We're on a campaign right now to drop a record in October.
right
So we
on.
have one more single we're dropping in August. We're working on the music video right now, and so we're on a pretty long campaign. I'll make sure to keep you in the loop.
All right. Yeah. Let's when you're about to release in October, let's try and do something like either right after or right before.
Cool.
Right
Sounds
on.
good.
And let's try and do another show in the future.
All right.
You
Awesome.
know?
Will
All
do.
right. I'm gonna hit stop.